to a well-designed business. My name is LuAnn and I'm so glad you found this podcast. Together with my husband Vince and our partner Bill, we have grown our company Window Works from the ground up. So I know and I understand the challenges you face in running your interior design business. I also know that your talent alone isn't enough to ensure your success. So on this podcast, we talk about strategies and practical steps to help you grow your business. But make no mistake about it, we have our share of fun here too, mixed in with those aha moments that I love so much. This isn't fluff. Nobody has time for that. Whether you are a new interior designer or a seasoned designer, I am here to help you create and to manage the kind of interior design firm that you dream of. It's straight talk and it's action. Are you ready? Let's get started. Hey, Vita, thanks so much for coming back for Window Treatment Friday. How are you today?
I am great, LuAnn. Thanks for having me back.
So, Vita, before we get started with today's show, custom versus ready-made window treatments, what you don't know, what you don't know, you don't know what you don't know, right? We have some news. We have some news that we have to share. Would you do the honors, please?
I am super excited. On September 24th, at the Design Trade Resources in Devon, Pennsylvania, LuAnn and myself, sponsored by Stout, will present a CEU on demystifying window treatments for interior designers. And so we're super excited about it.
Isn't that awesome? I'm psyched. I can't wait. You know what, Vita? What's interesting is working with you on this project and looking forward to doing that with Stout. And they're such a great partner in this. Shout out to Stout. I'm excited about window treatments again. I didn't know if it could happen, but it happened.
Well, you've been doing it for all these decades, and now you're kind of stepping back to do the podcast, and now you're pulling yourself back into the world of window treatments.
Correction, you're pulling me back in. Oh, man.
I'll take it.
No. And of course, I still am seeing my customers at Window Works, but certainly not to the level that I was. And, it's funny, Vita, I'll just share this one thing before we get into our show. I don't know if you heard the episode a couple of weeks ago with Nate Burkus, but I asked Nate and I said to him, this is might be a little bit like a blunt kind of a question, but you don't really need to have an interior design firm at this point. Why do you do it? Like, you've got the TV show and you've got all these other revenue streams. And of course, I knew he was talking about how much he values his senior lead designer at Lauren. And I said, is it possibly, respect for her, right? She's helped you build this firm. And so, hey, I got a TV show, bye. Or is it protection with having multiple revenue streams? And he said to me, good question. And he said, and the answer is truly that by doing the interior design, real life for real people, understanding what real challenges are, what real solutions are, having to go into the marketplace and look for real solutions and finding always what's new and what's happening in the industry, he said, makes me better at the other things that I do, the TV shows and the books and all of the other stuff. And so, of course, it's the same with me. I'm not leaving Window Works, right? It's not happening. And of course, this little thing that we're doing here is also something that keeps me connected to it and everything. So I just want to make sure everybody's not worried that I'm leaving Window Works. Vin's got he's got my ankle like around a chain, and then there's a thing over there to the building. I'm not leaving.
Like, don't go.
So anyway, all right. So Vita, today we're going to talk about custom versus ready-made. This is a great place to start to just kind of set the table for all the episodes coming after this. And, we have made to order, we have custom, with custom, we have made to order, we have, of course, the beauty, the luxuriousness, the perfect fit, and we have the investment. And then we've got on the other side, we have ready-made. Talk to us a little bit about what are these differences are.
Right. And so like you said, with custom, it's all those the luxuriousness of it, the beauty, the perfect fit, whereas with the ready-made, it's and here, of course, we're mostly talking about drapery panels and some Roman shades. These are made to specific specification, predetermined spec. They're not made to fit a custom measure. And of course, because of that, the investment is not quite as large as with the custom treatment. So of course, they're more economical. So we just wanted to get those quick definitions out of the way to make sure that all of our listeners are on the same page and we'll know what we're talking about.
Exactly. So you can pick a ready-made out of a package. You can order it out of a catalog. You're going to be limited to certain widths and lengths, certain patterns, certain textures, certain styles, whereas obviously custom, the sky is the limit. I used to say, if you can get me a picture, I can make it. So
that's a good one. I'm going to steal it.
Now, the reason that we are doing this particular topic is we're not here to talk anybody out of having ready-mades as part of what they offer to their design clients, right? It's not that commercial custom is not the only way to go, right, Vita?
That's right. That's right. And we're also here not to advocate, even though, of course, we're both custom window treatment experts, but we're not here to talk you into using custom all the time. We understand that life happens and budgets happen and different clients happen, and we understand that different situations call for different things. But we also, in the spirit of our value system, essentially, which is what we shared on the first episode, we want to be unbiased, we want to be truthful, we want to be open, and we're here to share the pros and the cons of using ready-mades.
Right. And what we understand is, as two people that have been doing this for many years, that whether you are a new designer, one of my baby designers, or you are a seasoned designer that just might have a particular client whose needs are not at the level of custom, that we get it. We get that you're going to, possibly need to have ready-mades in your bag of tricks. I know for us, Vita, often I will have a client that we've done work with them custom for many years, and now maybe one of their children has an apartment in Hoboken or an apartment in New York City, and there's a 1-year lease, and the client, my direct client, is accustomed to custom and understands the difference, but also is thinking, I'm paying the bill for all of this, and they're going to leave here for a year. So what can we do here, LuAnn?
That's a really good point. And so another obvious reason to not use custom and to use the ready-mades is let's say if you have like a secondary space, maybe it's a second floor guest bedroom or third floor guest bedroom, and you really don't want to spend that kind of money to do the custom.
Right. Now, I don't know about you, but just off topic a tiny bit, we don't handle ready-mades in our business. If no matter how wonderful and fabulous client you are of mine, if ultimately what's better for you is ready-mades, I will say to them, look, this is sort of in the size range that you can go get ready-mades. You should go do that. If, this is a 1-year rental or a temporary space or whatever. Will you go and get and access ready-mades for your clients, Vita, and install them?
Oh, that's a really loaded question, LuAnn. Okay. So the short answer is yes. The slightly longer answer is I will hum and haw about it.
Okay.
The even longer answer is I personally won't go out and buy them and source them and whatnot, but the designer will do that. The only way that I would get involved the only reason I would get involved is out of respect and really loyalty for my designer. Because I understand that they're not using ready-mades because they really love them or because they really want them. I understand that they're using them because, like we said, certain circumstances called for them. And so because they're trying to just make it work, and they need a partner to make it work for them, I serve as that partner. Because in general, I position myself as their partners, there's an extension of their team and so forth. I don't want to just leave them high and dry. And so if they need me to install them, I'll send my installer to do that. If they need me to maybe embellish them a little bit, I will do that as well. But I will put a caveat on it saying that, listen, Mrs. Designer, it's not going to look as good as what we usually do. So like we just really need to kind of tame our expectations. And usually the response is yes, I know, of course not. We don't have anything, high and mighty on our brains, but we just need to make it work. Could you help me? And so I do it out of that help for them, out of being of service to them.
Well, and so what's funny is in your answer, I realize I always forget that you are trade only. See, so I go retail and trade. And so for retail, I won't. But to your point, it hasn't happened often, but I agree with you in your sentiment, and of course we would do the same for our designer trade, because you are their one and only source, and so for a designer that is accustomed to getting everything custom made from you, when they have that opportunity where they're trying, what's happening is what we're describing is the designer is doing the same thing for their client that you're describing you're doing for the designer. You just don't want to leave your client high and dry. They don't want to leave their client high and dry, so we don't leave them high and dry. But when I first was thinking of it, it's to the retail. I don't do it. It's like no.
I wouldn't do it either.
No,
I would not do it
because the expectations are completely different. And when you work with a designer week after week, month after month, year after year, that they understand the expectations, and like you said, to tame the expectations. So, whole different story. Yeah. Okay, awesome.
A whole different story. Yeah. Exactly.
All right. So, when is it obvious that we need custom and that we really can't even be thinking about whether we're going to entertain a ready-made option, Vita?
Well, of course, that would be like a quote unquote weird window situation, right? When you have like a 2-story family room or a foyer, where you have a bow window or a bay window, a box window, when you have an arch window, any kind of weird shapes like that would be much more difficult to do anything with ready-mades, and most likely they're not even available. Of course, then it would be a special customer need or request. Like what comes to mind is motorization. When, listen, if the budget allows for custom, of course it looks better. I mean, that's just the fact, right? We're not trying to promote something that is not true. That's just factual truth.
Right.
Some clients may have discerning taste, right? And I think my last point on that would be like a prior knowledge and appreciation for custom window treatments. If it's like a returning client, or if it's a relative of like a referral, right, of a returning client, and they really know what they're getting into. Would you agree with that?
I would, and I think that's a great tip to bring out for our designer friends listening. So, for example, if you are in the home and you are in your first initial consultation and you're doing your meet and greet and understanding the scope of the project, if you're looking around and you're noticing that they have custom window treatments, even if they are swags and jabos from the 80s, right? I mean, that is saying that this client knows and understands the value of custom, okay? Now, of course, sometimes you have to say, did you put these up here? Oh, no, I bought them with the house. All right, fine. We're like, you can't account for every, scenario here. But the point of it is that if you can understand and you can discern that the potential client that you're working with is accustomed to custom window treatments, then this is your open door to make sure that you include this in your design proposal, that you ask them and say, should I make an assumption that we'd love to replace these when we replace the furnishings and the paint and everything else, and we want to stay with the high quality custom that you're accustomed to, right?
Yeah. That's a really, really good point for sure.
Yeah.
I always love your selling tips. Like I can geek out on window treatments and weird shapes and I don't know, motorization and hems, and here sweeps in LuAnn and goes, and here's how you sell it.
Well, this is how my brain clicks. It's right. Like I'm always looking for the cues. Like what is the thing, right? And by converse, right? As long as we're going to do that. So the thing is, if you go in and the house is brand new, it's sheetrock. You don't know what they did. I always want to find out, did you have custom last time? And if the answer is no, why are we thinking about custom this time? Because that answer leads me right? That answer tells me where to go. Oh, I grew up with custom. This is my first house. My mother always had custom window treatments. Or this is my second home. We had custom in our first home. We understand, the value. And of course, they very rarely say the other half of that sentence. They just say, I had custom. And you're like, okay, you get it. And then, but that's the point though, that I will put that other sentence and I go, oh, that's awesome. So you really do understand the value and the quality difference with custom window treatments. I make them say yes to me. Oh yeah, we understand. Okay, great.
Good for you.
Yeah,
good for you. Yeah. I really like it, LuAnn, how, and I know that we're kind of diverting from ready-mades versus custom, but I think it's important what you just said. Now, if I can just accentuate on it for a second, you always lead the conversation in the direction that you want it to go, whether the customer have said it because you've led them to it, or they didn't say it, but they've gotten to just up to a certain point, then you add that sort of suffix to the whole paragraph.
Right. It's true.
And get them to where you need that conversation to go. I love that whole strategy of leading the communication in your direction. That's very, very smart.
Yeah, no, I'm glad that you notice it, because it is one of the best tools that you have at your disposal to really close more sales at higher profit. I mean, it's as simple as that. So yeah, awesome. Yay. Okay. So now there are times, Vita, that we don't need custom. So tell us about those times when we don't really need it.
Of course, that would be like a basic window configuration, not some of the ones that I've mentioned before, where the budget is an issue, where maybe it was a younger customer generation, and like to your point earlier, that has moved into a temporary rental, or maybe it's a generation that is not quite up to speed on the valuation of custom window treatments. They haven't quite wrapped their brains around it yet. But I think for the point, for the purpose rather of our conversation today, and I think the next thing that we want to bring up, we are going to assume that the designers listening would have loved to do custom, but for all of the above reasons, they decided not to. And here they are faced with a ready-made situation, and we just want to tell them what they need to know about it, what unfortunately they may or may not know. So that's really why we're here.
I like that. So and I think that's probably a very fair assumption to make, that most interior designers would love only to do custom, because this is the way to add a nice amount of profit to every single project that they're doing. But there are always situations that could come across their path where it's not going to work for whatever reasons, and the ready-mades must be considered. But what we want to do now, you're going to talk about the things to be aware of when you do work with ready-mades. Okay, so for our purposes, what you're saying is, we know that we want custom, we know that we'd rather have it, and we know that custom is amazing, but let's just talk about the things now that might be surprising about ready-mades if they haven't had experience with working with them before.
And the first thing that comes to mind is that most ready-made, I would say 95% of ready-mades, come prepackaged, folded in a bag. Now, it may sound like it sounds like such an obvious statement, right? And of course, we would probably all know that they come prepackaged in the bag. But if you have never unpackaged those and put them up and steamed them and dressed them and tried to press them, you have no idea what you're in for. LuAnn, have you ever done it before? Oh my God,
it's the worst. It is absolutely the worst. I've never physically done it, but back in the day, before we were very clear on what we will do at Window Works and what we will not do at Window Works, I can remember Billy, coming back and saying, there isn't enough steam on the planet to make these things look good.
So I've actually stopped steaming them because I tried, and Billy is absolutely 1,000% correct. And so what I've done in the past, sometimes actually, one of my design firms used ready-mades for their model homes. Subsequently, they've changed to custom because they do look so much better, but there were times that we used ready-mades. And so the model is empty. There are brand new carpets on the floor. I would literally set up a like a press shop on the floor of the model home. I would bring my iron. I would bring, something to put on this on the rug, and I would literally press them. I mean, just with like my entire body weight, pressing out the stupid crease and wrinkles. and even that took forever. Oh, one time we had like a whole big model. I hired someone for like $10 an hour to press them for me on the floor.
Oh my goodness. I have to say, the few times that we will find ourselves in a situation, to your point, with a designer, or maybe the very rare occasion a retail consumer of ours, but it's going to be somebody that's a 30 plus year customer. It's going to be somebody that we really, really know well. But what we do now is we say to them, okay, we're going to install them for you, but you've got to take them to the dry cleaner and get them pressed before we'll come out.
But you know what happens at the dry cleaners?
They shrink. Yeah, I know that. I know. I said it at the same time, Jinx.
Jinx, you owe me a soda.
But that's why I won't take them to the dry cleaner.
That's true. And I have said to my designers, take them. Know they will shrink, but also know that they will shrink at unpredictable rates.
Right.
They'll shrink a little, some will shrink a lot, and lining may not shrink, but the face fabric will shrink.
Right. Now, but I don't actually tell them to have them cleaned. I just ask them to have them pressed at the dry cleaner. So do you find that they shrink in just pressing as well?
I do.
Okay.
I have.
I don't have that much experience with it personally. You know what I mean? But it's brutal. But that's why my whole thing is, do all that crazy stuff without us. We're not in the middle of that. We didn't make, them wrong or, do anything to them. And if they are still amazing when you're done, we'll put them up. So, but it's true. They are, the pre-packaging is killer, because who knows, it's been sitting on the shelf for 2 weeks, 2 months, or 2 years. And the wrinkles are embedded. It's just, it's brutal. Yeah.
Yeah. Those creases, they're like wrinkles on my face. They don't come out anymore. No matter what creams I use.
That's right.
Or whatever, they're just like
Stock
embedded.
and oil of Olay doesn't help.
That's right. And another point, I think, too, in the whole context of you don't know what you don't know. So the second or the third, whichever one at this point, to know about is the lining. So the lining on ready-mades is usually a very thin, very inexpensive, low-grade sateen lining, which what happens, again, like, why do you care, right? Why does the designer care what kind of lining? What happens is the drape will not hang, will not drape, will just not look as good because of that quality lining.
And that's if you get a drape that's lined. A lot of times you don't even have the option of a lined drape. But the truth is, sometimes it's the truth. Lining is so important to a drapery. I mean, I'm sure you're the same as me. I've got about 8 different linings that I will use based on the situation. And of course, I don't even have those conversations with our designers. We just know which one to use and we put it on there. Unless there's a specification and somebody says X, Y, Z. But otherwise, it's like, look, I know the right one. Don't worry about it. I got your back. You know what I mean?
That's true. That's true. I do have my favorites too, my regular go-tos.
So other things, that I truly, truly love about ready-made draperies is that, 84 inches in the package, like that little 84 on the outside, and then you open it up and one of the panels is 84 and maybe the other is 83 and a half. I mean, that's a real thing. That's a real thing.
Surprise!
Or worse yet, one pair is at 83 and one pair is at 84, but the 2 windows are side by side and your installer has put the 2 rods at the same height, and now one pair is 2 inches off the floor instead of half, inch off the floor, whatever it is. It's like brutal. It's absolutely brutal. Yeah. What else goes wrong with ready-made?
So another thing to know is that the side hems and often the bottom hem are what's called straight stitched, which is a regular, kind of like your regular stitch that goes through the fabric, versus what's called blind hemmed. And I don't want to get into too much of a technicality here. What you need to know is that the straight stitch goes through the fabric and pulls on the fabric, which means that the hems will pucker. They will just not lay flat and straight, versus what would be a blind stitch in the custom drapery.
Nice. Very nice.
And that is unsteamable, unpressable.
Right.
There's nothing you can do about it. I mean, if the stitch pulled the hem all the way along the length of the drape and it kind of kept pulling it, there's just no way to undo it unless you just redo the entire hem.
Exactly. Okay, love it. And then the other thing is that the widths are sometimes too narrow. You don't get a full width. Maybe it's only 44 or 46 or 52. Well, 52 is okay. You could live with 52, right? But sometimes they're like skimpy. And how about just that? They're in widths. So how many times you go into a house and the window is 6 feet wide, but you got to put 4 panels across, and then you have the break in between them, right?
Right.
That's how I grew up. That's how our drapes were.
And then, you know what, my personal favorite, quote unquote, is when the drapery panel smiles.
Aw, that's so sweet.
I know, isn't it? And so what I mean by that is when the side hems are further off the floor than the middle of the drape. And so when you look at the bottom of the drapery panel, the bottom hem, it kind of curves. Right. The side is up, one side is up, the other side is up, the middle is down almost on the floor. So it just kind of smiles at you.
Yeah,
and
so
says,
fun.
ha.
Yeah.
Not gonna lay, not gonna do, not gonna behave. Nope, not happening, not today, not for you, not ever.
That's right. And so the thing is, we're making fun. We're having a little bit of fun at the expense of the ready-made drapery market. But why are we telling you this? We're telling you this, again, as Vita said in the beginning, the point is that there may be situations where, because you have a good, valuable client on your hands, that some of the secondary areas, or even what is third-dairy a word? What is the?
Let's make up one.
The third-dairy areas might require, or just a ready-made is the answer and the solution, and you agree in your professional opinion that okay, let's do that. But we want you to understand some of the things that you need to be aware of. That's why we're having fun at the expense of ready-mades. But the reality is that you need to be able to set expectations up at the beginning, because if you don't yourself have you might be an interior designer that's been in business 25 years and only have used custom, maybe every house you've lived in, every client you've done, and you're thinking, okay, you know what, even if I hate to use the RH word, but even if it's from RH, it can have these issues. Do not think that
sure.
It won't.
Exactly. For sure. Not even if. Are you kidding? I've done RH.
Yeah.
I've personally installed them. I've experienced these issues. I've cursed them out.
Right. And the thing about it is so I think that's the point. It's not like we're not just talking about going into a curtain shop or online from Amazon and getting a $40 panel. Panels at stores like RH and others like them, they could be $400, $500, $600 for a pair of draperies that are ready made and still legitimately have these issues. And that is where our goal in this is that, because if we're not just talking about when you spend $40 and darn well it's not going to be good. We're talking about when you do spend $300 or $400 or $500, and if you don't know these things that could go wrong, you could possibly be in a situation where you say, okay, yes, the custom draperies for here were $800 and we can do ready-made for $450, and now we can get 2 windows done practically for the price of one. I'm on board. But you need to follow that up with, but I need you to understand the possible things that could happen when we do ready-made, and there's not going to be anything I'm going to be able to do about them. That's what this is. This is not for you as a designer to be surprised by even an expensive ready-made, right, Vita?
Exactly. And also important to know that don't be fooled by the pictures. Those pictures of ready-mades, they look really pretty and really beautiful. And oftentimes they're actually not even pictures of the draperies. They're computer renderings of draperies, and they look quite nice. And that's what the customer falls in love with, if you will. Mm-hmm. And you as a designer who wants to satisfy your customer, and I totally get that, may sort of acquiesce and say, sure, okay, let's do it because the picture looks nice. But those pictures are very, very deceiving. And the reality, unfortunately, oftentimes just not there.
Right. And the other thing is, too, do you find that when you particularly at that end where you're not spending $40 and you're spending a couple of $100 or more, that, the dialette runs can be very different. Those are getting made thousands and thousands at a time. And so the particular, olive sage green of one velvet panel may not be the same as another one because they weren't necessarily made at the same time from the same run of fabric, right?
That's a really good point, actually. Yep.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. So, you got to worry about this stuff. So, and go ahead.
Just to say that it's important to realize that's what your reality may be if you decide to go in that direction, and to protect yourself, right? So we not only just want to educate you, but we want you to protect yourself. And so how do you do it? You talk to the customer about potential pitfalls of the strategy, but you also want to protect yourself. And by that, I mean, if you do decide to go in that direction and you do have to install them, just make sure to allot enough money in the budget and enough time for your installer to take care of all of those issues that we had just talked about.
Yeah. And the truth of the matter is the funny thing is often the install can take longer with the ready-mades than it does with custom, especially because of things like the little nuances in the lengths not being exact, or, having to take more time to dress it to make it look like the darn picture. Okay. And so you might have a need for it. There's no question, but just go in eyes wide open. Exactly. Right.
And so there's also a couple of options that I want to give our designers to consider when doing ready-mades in the effort to maybe just kind of embellish them a little bit and make them a little bit better.
Okay.
And one of the ideas could be to take a ready-made and take like a simple grosgrain tape, or maybe something a little bit fancier in some sort of a trim or some kind of fancier tape, and give it to your workroom and have them apply it to the leading edge of the drapery panel or all around or wherever you can afford it. But having that touch just kind of makes it just a little bit more custom, a little bit fancier, a little bit prettier. And I think the customer may like it a little bit more.
Okay. When your workroom, Vita, applies the trim to a lead edge of a ready-made drapery, do they have to open up the hems and everything and do that, or do they do it on the finished drapery? In the very few instances that we have done it, we've done it on the finished drapery, because by the time we open it up and apply it onto the fabric and then realign it, then we might as well have done it from scratch. Right. And does it work okay?
Point, it actually... Well, what happens is if we are opening it up, then we're checking the lengths, and we're going to hem it properly. We're just checking the whole thing, and we're tabling it just like we would the normal drapery panel. But to your point, actually, LuAnn, that's a good idea too, because if the customer and or designer are in love with a particular fabric of a ready-made drapery, you could, I suppose, save your budget on purchasing the fabric and then just take it to your workroom and have them take it apart and start anew as if they were starting with a new bolt of fabric.
Right. Because I find that a lot of workrooms will resist adding a trim to a ready-made drape without opening it all up. And then by then, like to your point, it's like, well, what are we doing all this for? We could have got 3 yards of fabric and started from scratch. So do you find that when in those couple of few instances when you have applied a trim to the lead edge that it looks good enough? It looks good? Okay. Thank you. Okay.
It looks better.
Moving right along.
It looks a little bit better. And to go back to where we started, I do it in service and out of loyalty to my designer.
Yes. Okay. I hear you. Yeah. It's tricky. It's tricky. That's the bottom line. It's tricky. And that's why we wanted to have this conversation about ready-made versus custom-made, because I think to your point, you said it once during the thing, we all know that we can rely on custom. We all know we can design it, imagine it, and an amazing talented workroom or seamstress can create it. it, but we don't always know what we don't know about ready-made.
I love that phrase.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I really do.
I love it too. So I think this is great, Vita. I just love these little, tips that you brought here to us and shared with us. And I just love the conversation. And of course, we're just, if you have things you want to know from us, you have questions, don't, be shy, send them over. Let us know what you think. You can always talk to us via Instagram on the post for this episode, because then both Vita and I can see it in real time and we can answer you right there, or on the post on Facebook for this, or on the post on LinkedIn for this particular episode, right?
I would love to hear from designers. Tell us what they thought about this particular episode. Have you done ready-mades? Have you not done them? Are you shying away, or have you had great experience? We don't know everything, right?
Right.
We know a lot, but certainly not everything. And if you've had some good experiences, I would love to know. If you had some bad ones, I would love to know why. And are those whys different from some of the reasons that we mentioned here? And of course, this was not to scare anyone. This was not to, this was really truly just to educate and to let people who have never done them to get to know what they don't know.
Right. You know what it is? The way I look at it is it's no different than if you were going on a trip and you were pulling out of your driveway and you were going to drive 40 miles away, and somebody said to you, look, this might be a completely smooth ride, don't worry about it, but there's a speed bump at 100 feet from now, and there's a red light here, and the bridge is out at the 10th mile. That's all it is. It's just be aware of what you might be dealing with when you are dealing with ready-made. It's as simple as that. No positive, no negative, just be prepared. So right.
Perfect closing. Love it.
All righty, Vita. Well, I thank you. I think you're amazing. I'm so glad that you do this with me, and everybody listening. We're so glad that you're tuning in and enjoying the show, and looking forward to the next episode. And don't forget, if you're in the New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania metro area, please come see us on September 24th, 2019, at the
Design Trade Resources.
Okay.
Which is a showroom exclusively to the trade, sponsored by Stout Fabrics. LuAnn and I presenting a presentation on demystifying window treatments.
Exactly. And the information will be on my website under the See LuAnn or events tab, or whatever it's called. Something like that. Something like come see me, and that's where it'll be. And of course, I'll always have it in the newsletter and things like that as well. All right, Vita, thanks so much. You guys have an excellent day. Decide to be excellent. Thank you so much for joining me again today. This podcast is a production of WindowWorks, your resource for custom window treatments and awnings. To learn how we can help you on your next interior design project, go to www.windowworks-nj.com. And if you're interested in working with me on your business, either through masterminds or one-on-one coaching, or you want to know how to get my book, The Making of a Well-Designed Business, or you just want to know what's going on in the podcast land and where I'm going to be, all of that is found at LuAnnNigara.com. Thank you so much. Have an excellent day.